Today I want to talk about a mystic called Baba Vanga. Now, she came from Bulgaria and was a prophet who lived from 1911 and died in 1996. So she's a comparatively recent mystic, as it were. And millions of people believed that she had paranormal abilities. She made many predictions in her own lifetime, some of which that came wrong, such as a few football predictions and so forth. But, you know, all of us mediums and psychics and seers and mystics, we get things right and we get things wrong. So, you know, we don't always see things with 100% clarity, but we often see some things that are so interesting that it makes you sit up and pay attention. Now, the thing with Baba Vanga was she was blind. It happened when she was a young girl, and she was allegedly picked up by a tornado. I don't know if you get tornadoes in Bulgaria. And with this weather we do now, but then you wouldn't. And allegedly she was lifted in the air and thrown into a nearby field, and gradually lost her sight from that point on. And by about the age of around about 15, she was completely blind. The pictures we see of her now tend to be when she was an old woman, and she does look like a real mystic looking person, you know. And I think this is why a lot of people, on one level anyway, buy into the idea of her being some special mystic, because she looks the part. You know, Hollywood couldn't dream up anything better, you know, the blind mystic making these predictions about the future. But saying that, now she did get an awful lot of things right, and some of those things seem to correspond with some of the things I've been saying. And I've only recently really discovered Baba Vanga because, like many people out there, I've got very interested in the way things are moving in the world at the moment, particularly with the presidential elections in America and so forth. We're all wondering, what does the future hold? Well, anyway, she reached the headlines, you know, around about 1989 sort of time, when many of her interpreted some of her readings to be a foresight into the 9/11 terror attacks. One of the things she said was, I'm going to quote it, I've got it written in front of me here, is, "Horror, horror, the American brethren will fall after being attacked by the steel birds. The wolves will be howling in a bush, and innocent blood will be gushing." Now, predicted in 1989, that was. Now, that sounds very much like some of the Nostradamus predictions that have been interpreted as the King of Terror falls from the sky and so forth. You know, it could easily be interpreted. The steel birds, clearly that sounds like aeroplanes, doesn't it? Attacked by the steel birds. You know, she may have been seeing that perhaps as, you know, bombers, you know. But anyway, it did, in retrospect, it certainly seems like 9/11. And the wolves will be howling in a bush. Bush? Could that be President Bush? Was he inwardly howling like a wolf? I mean, he certainly, the wolves were certainly sent out after that to Afghanistan and the rest. So, you know, there's an interesting prediction. She also predicted the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, and many things that she wrote about seem to suggest the rise of ISIS. So, you know, that was interesting. Now, going back when President Obama was about to be elected, there was a lot of talk about her because she seemed to be predicting that the 44th president would be an African American. And, you know, that at the time, you know, Obama really did just overtake Hillary Clinton, didn't he? I mean, he was not supposed to be the president by any means. He really jumped the queue, and everybody was kind of shocked that a black president sort of leapt ahead like he did in the primaries and so forth. So, you know, that was a pretty good prediction that would happen. But she also predicted, or that's how people interpreted her predictions, that Obama would be the last president of the USA. Now, we've had Trump now elected, so he clearly wasn't the last president of the USA. She also said that Obama was supposed to bring absolute economic downfall for America. And that didn't happen either, really. I mean, yes, it could be argued that, you know, he didn't leave the economy in a very good shape, but, you know, he wasn't the last president of the United States, because we got another one. But then, of course, people like to reinterpret these things again. So I think we have to be a bit cautious, don't we, what we read into things. But some of the interesting words that she said in there, that the final president would be a sort of, so like a messiah type personality, you know. And, okay, Donald Trump, would he be like a messiah-like character, you know? I mean, he certainly is a strange man, isn't he? He's not like any president we've ever seen, ever before. I mean, he takes things on with a sense of purpose and a way of doing things that completely throw everybody into a frenzy, because they just can't handle this guy. He's like a loose cannon, you know? And actually, you know, although you love him or hate him, you've got to give it to him. he gets things done in his own way, you know. Oh, well, you know, there's a contentious thing. I don't want to get political. I'm just looking at the predictions, you know. But anyway, I'm just looking at some of my notes here. So they interpreted that the prophecy some of these prophecies that were supposed to be about Obama may actually be about Donald Trump after all. She also claimed about Obama. This is what she said. Everyone will put their hopes in to end it, but the opposite will happen. He will bring the country down, and conflicts between North and South states will escalate. Now, I predicted in my predictions about a split in America between East and West rather than North and South. But in a way, I suppose America is in a turmoil at the moment. Now, previous people were interpreting this as being all about Obama. Now, could we perhaps be seeing this as possibly being about Trump? That there is this sort of conflict in America happening? And she also said that something would happen to the president before he was sworn in on the 20th of January 2017. Well, again, that didn't happen. People were reading this in saying, oh yes, we saw it all in the headlines. Baba Vanga predicts that Trump won't ever become the president. And now that's wrong, isn't it? Because he is the president, you know, and he was signed in. You know, so that's a fact. So you can't always say these prophecies are 100% right. You know, there's something happened there. He was definitely signed in. So, you know, the people were interpreting that as being Trump. Whether a lot of people think, Donald Trump's going to be impeached, they all say, you know, he's like Nixon. In my predictions, I made the prediction that I didn't think he would last very long as a president, not because of things like that, because I felt his health would be a problem. But, you know, there are many people that also predict that he might be the sort of person that's going to be needed, because Baba Vanga also prophesied that there would be a massive Muslim war. Now, we've been in a kind of massive Muslim war, in a way, since 9/11. It's not the sort of war with tanks and guns always. It's been a sort of a clandestine war, hasn't it? I mean, it's been a war on terror, as well as a war on the ground. And she predicted that the Great Muslim War would happen, but as it would bring the overthrow of Europe. And in some respects, you know, Europe has been undermined by terrorists, hasn't it? You know, it's come in a way that we can't fight against. You know, you can't use tanks against a terrorist. And a terrorist could use things like chemical weapons, because there have been, you know, talks of terrorists getting hold of the chemical armories in places like Libya, for example, and places like Syria and places. There's chemical bombs that could be dropped or let off in places like Paris and Berlin and London and wherever, you know. So we live in fear of these things. So perhaps she, you know, there's credence to the possibility of what she could do there. But she talks also about a prophecy also that there would be a man that would sign a great lasting peace in the world, that would bring peace. Now, she also predicted the end of famine in the world. Now, could it be that, you know, Trump, could he be the sort of man that could actually get things done on the world stage and get people signing a peace agreement of some sort. I mean, he's kind of keen to do a deal with Putin. Now, Putin's, you know, a difficult man. There's so much wrong with what he says and does. But, you know, it takes a businessman don't care if a person's good or bad, does he? You know, a businessman wants to get the deal done. I don't care if, you know, you hate you or love you. I want to get the deal done. And perhaps it needs an attitude like that. And perhaps also with Iran, you know, I mean, we did step around, didn't we? We never got a real deal done with Iran. You know, it was just swept under the carpet, the whole nuclear problem. You know, could Trump be the man that could do a deal there? You know, force the issue into the light. You know, we're going to sort this out, guys. You know, and similarly with North and South Korea. You know, I've predicted that there's. In fact, Baba Vanga predicted the coming together of North and South Korea, and I didn't know this until recently, but it's the same thing I predicted in my 2017 predictions that I made, that this year it would happen, that there would be a collapse in the North Korea and a unification. I don't see it as being a terrible thing. I think it will happen in a good way in the end. You know, I think people will come together, but you know, again, a deal maker is needed. And you know, love him or hate him, Trump, I think, is a man that could strike deals with people. He's a kind of a black and white thinker, isn't he? And he wants things sorted out. He wants the deal signed and done. He wants the contract, you know? He's thinking in terms of business. And I suppose applying that to politics could kind of work in some respects, you know? We don't want greys, we want it sorted. You know, this is how we deal with it. So, you know, I don't know. Baba Vanga seems to be predicting good and bad for the way ahead. She seems to be predicting that Trump might be the man that can sort the deal out. And yet, if we read it another way, that should have been Obama, you know. So, you know, predictions are such a sticky thing, aren't they, really? You know, we can read and reread into things. They do it with Nostradamus. And even my work now, you know. I mean, I've done these predictions for 2017, and they've been picked up virally, and some of the newspapers have picked them up, and some of the other YouTube channels have picked them up. And I look at my predictions, and yes, they use the predictions fine. You know, they're saying things I've said, but they put it with all spooky music, and they put all death scenes and war scenes, and I think, what? Did I say that? You know, dramatise, don't we? We make news. We want drama. But sometimes the future isn't quite as bad as it seems. You know, who would have thought we'd have got through so many troubles that have happened in this world? You know, we've seen Berlin walls come down. We've seen bombs on Hiroshima, we've seen First and Second World Wars, we've seen Vietnam, and we're all still here. You would have thought that would have wiped us out, any one of those great, terrible things of history, you know, and many more, of course, you know. So, you know, I believe we'll still keep going. And as I've been saying in my other predictions, you know, all of these things, we should look at the bigger picture. The fact that the worldly things are ultimately worldly things. Mankind is here in order to evolve. And the stage of evolvement we're at now is the stage of the evolution of consciousness. The consciousness that can continue after death. The soul even, sorry skeptics, but that's the way we're going. And as long as consciousness is evolving and can always evolve, we'll always be here. So have no fear, but some interesting thoughts there. I hope you enjoyed that little discourse. Jane and I now do our spiritual work for our foundation. All the profits that come from things like our conferences and theatres and workshops and all those exciting things now go into this foundation, which ultimately has the long-term plan of building centres in the UK and maybe around the world one day. But meanwhile, we've been doing a lot of direct spiritual work with it. We've been going out, feeding people in India, giving to the destitute, giving to beggars. We've helped feed schools, helped orphanages, and we've even given cows to older people that have no other form of income. So mediumship can change your life, but it can also help people directly in the world. So go to the links at the end and find out all about what Jane and I are trying to do. And you can do a lot just by sharing these videos on social media. Help us get the word out. Help us to do something really good in this world. Click on this picture of me to subscribe to our channel and see all of our latest videos as soon as they're published. Or click on this next video for more of our stuff.